Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Improve Podcast, the official podcast of Classic Studios. I am your host, Chase Collins, and happy Monday. Happy Monday. I just got back from a run, so sorry if I sound out of breath. Take a deep breath right there. I hope you all had a great weekend and are ready to get the week started. I hope you set your goals for this week. Let me fill you in on what my goals are for this week. I think because I'm making some good progress on my new script, my new screenplay, I'm going to set a goal to finish the rough draft of the first act. So that's about, oh gosh, like 9 scenes, 7 or 8 scenes, something like that. So I'm going to try and write those 7 scenes, those 9 scenes. I can't remember how many I did, but I'm going to try and write that this week. So that's going to be my creative personal goal. And then beyond that, I want to, keep up with my fitness. I just got back from a run. I want to keep that up and then, get to the gym, maintain, professional life and everything like that. So things are looking up for this week. So I'm excited to get this week started. I hope you are too. I hope you set your goals for this week. And I hope you're excited for this podcast. If you've seen the title, you know what it's about. And you know that we have two guests this week. So we have Brian and Michael both on the podcast. And it was really fun. You can probably tell I'm a little like frazzled in the very beginning because I didn't know that Michael was going to be on the podcast. Brian sprung it on me, and that was a fun little how do I describe it? A fun little, shake up to keep me on my toes, and that's good. If you want to be a good podcast host, you gotta be on your toes, and you gotta be ready to adjust whenever, change comes, because that's what it's all about. Life is ever changing, and speaking of changing and improving, Brian, what this podcast focuses on is Brian's new hobby, I guess you could call it, of trying to learn a second language. And I don't know if any of you have tried to learn a second language, but they say that the older you get, the harder it is. And Brian is 27 years old. Now, by no means is he old, but it's certainly older than if he was learning a second language in elementary school or, as a little toddler growing up in a bilingual household. So this was something that was really inspiring to me to hear. Like, he just went out and did it and tried to learn. He's about, a few months into his journey at this point, but he's making great progress. And I think it's really valuable for anyone who's trying to pick up a passion project or learn a second language or do anything. You can do it at any age. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can start chasing your dreams right now, today. All right. Well, that's going to be it for me. I will see you all at the end of the podcast for the outro. Catch you later. Bye. Craig.
What's up, Craig? What's up, my buddy Craig?
What up, my buddy? Dude, I just gave Craig admin permissions.
Dude, no, you'd never give a robot all those permissions.
Let me see.
Dude, that's pretty Monty Python-esque. Yeah, it's insane. Dude, are you good to go on the... I will be.
Cool, man. So Brian, yeah, I just wanted to talk about the 100 Day Sober things and you waking up early and your progress with Spanish. Those are the things that I wanted to talk about.
Oh, dude, I switched to ancient Albanian sign language.
Oh yeah, dude.
It's a much more useful language.
So that wasn't inaudible.
Yeah, man, what do you want to hear about?
Dude, just walk me through that. I don't know. I honestly want to start from the beginning because I think it's like such a wild thing to do and it's so interesting. Like, I don't know anyone who at 27 decides to learn a new language. Like, that's a very rare thing to do. So I don't know, I'd be interested to know like how you came to that, I don't know, realization that
Yeah, man.
you needed to do.
There's a lot of people that decide to learn a language at different stages in their lives. Like, as an American, everybody learns American already. Everybody speaks American throughout the world. Um, it's not
English?
English. They don't learn English. They learn American.
Fair enough.
No, but everybody speaks English. Everybody learns English because it's the common language. It's the language of the internet. It's the language of the UN. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
so as Americans, we're not compelled to learn any other language
It's true.
because just by default, everyone else speaks English.
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of Americans that have an interest in learning languages. It doesn't matter what kind of language. There's a whole community of people that are just interested in learning languages just for the sake of learning a language. Um, we have to take some kind of language in high school, and uh, language that's taught in an academic setting, they're finding that it's pretty awful. We all took a couple years at the very least of foreign language in high school, but we don't know any of it. We don't remember any of that language because of a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons is that we didn't have the motivation to learn. It was just a high school class, and for the most part, it sucked. Like it wasn't really a fun thing to do. It was difficult and challenging, um, and especially like going back to what I was saying about everyone else learning or knowing English. There's no reason to learn another language, or at least from like a high schooler's point of view. Like they don't have that motivation, that intrinsic reason to learn anything other than English because we just there's no reason to
Yeah.
from the perspective of a high schooler.
I think that goes like honestly beyond just like languages. Like I think most high schoolers are not motivated to learn anything,
That's a great
other than
point.
they
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah. So coming from an academic setting, a lot of people have this negative connotation of like what learning a foreign language is like, because of the way that we learned it in high school. Everyone has those memories. So there's a ton of different methods that people use, and I don't know. I just wanted to learn Spanish. I was like, screw it. It's probably the most useful language that someone in America can learn because we have so many native Spanish speakers that live here. Um, I
So
don't know
that's
how
the reason
many.
why it was Spanish. It wasn't like more thought out than that. It's just like probably Spanish.
Yeah, from a practical point of view, like if I like any one language, so also it's the easiest, arguably the easiest language to learn for an English speaker.
Oh.
Um, there's a handful of languages that are structured the same way as English, um, that are much easier to learn than others. So, for example, like Spanish, Italian, French, German, like uh, and obviously a handful of others, they're much easier for a native English speaker to learn than, say, like Arabic or Mandarin or even like Russian, because they are different alphabets. They have wildly different grammatical structures. I mean everything. So for me, like Spanish was an easier language to learn. It was a practical language. It's something that I have started to enjoy, and I also have started liking the culture as well. Like, there is no Spanish speaking culture, but the cultures of certain Spanish speaking countries, I'm learning about them, and it's like really interesting. And I don't know, it's just been a fun journey.
So so you started with like learning languages in high school sort of sucks, and I guess it gave everyone a bad taste in their mouth. So it sort of deters a lot of folks from wanting to start learning a language later on in life. But people do it. You sort of made that case that people do it. But what was your reason for doing it? Was it just like I need to learn a language like just to grow as a human? Or I know you made the case for Spanish being super applicable, like in America because of all the native Spanish speakers. But why, like, who does that? Why did you do that? Like, I'm gonna learn a language.
Yeah, so a few reasons. One reason was simply just to be able to communicate with more people. There's like a ton of people in the world that speak Spanish that don't speak English, and I'm not able to communicate with those people if I wanted to. So learning a foreign language allows you to communicate with more people. Also, it's just kind of like an intellectual pursuit
Yeah,
at some point too. It's like, oh, cool. Um, I stopped playing video games. It's like, well, what am I gonna like? What's a better way to spend that time? Like, oh, well, it'd be really cool to learn a language, and I can
right.
pour all that energy into learning a language. So it's
That yeah,
it's just
that's
cool.
where
I don't know.
it is cool. It's really cool. It's really interesting and it's super like motivating and inspiring. And like that's where it would come for me, like if I ever decided to, listening to you when you first started this, like I don't know, when did you pick this up? Like a year ago, 8 months ago,
6 months ago, yeah.
6 months ago. Yeah. So like that's where hearing you talk about this, it's like my ego gets lit up and I'm like, oh my God, I need to learn a new language to keep up with Brian. And that's where like the intellectual pursuit and like maybe competitive nature like gets in. And that's why I would want to. But then like you making this case of like, well, it's also really practical and like you can communicate with your fellow humans that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. It's like, oh, so there's also like a not an altruistic, but like a and not philanthropic. I don't know what the right word is for it, but beyond just self-serving intellectual. There's something
Yeah. Well, I
bigger.
guess I can touch on that too. Part of it is going back to like Americans being famous for or infamous for not knowing any other language besides English.
Mm,
It's kind of me like in a sense like paying my dues and being able to relate like, oh no, like I understand what it's like to learn another language. Like
right.
I'm not so close-minded that I never pursued that
Yeah.
um you
It's
know
like it's like it's like millennials and Gen Zers not knowing how to drive a stick shift. If I could make a bad comparison.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know, and it doesn't come from a place of like, you know, condescending or like superiority or anything like that. It's just I want to put myself where like a because we interact with people that learned English as a second or third or fourth language every day. We interact with those people every day, and we have no idea what it's like. So me going through this journey of learning a foreign language, it's opening my eyes like, oh dang, yeah, that must have been really hard. Like especially because English is a difficult language to learn. Or so I've. It was easy for me. I don't know what they're talking
Yeah,
about.
right. Just immersion,
um,
right?
yeah,
Can I interject?
go for it, dude.
Just along the lines of like most Americans not knowing a second language. I think that's one of the. I mean, America is one of the few places in like the developed world where we don't have second languages or third. Uh, Most foreign countries, especially in Europe, they're speaking 2 to 3 different languages by the time they're 10 years old, and that's super rare in America, if
So
not heard of.
it's interesting that you made that point because the United States does have a second language, and that second language is Spanish.
Oh yeah.
13.5% of U.S. residents, 13.5% of the entire population of the United States speak Spanish at home as their primary language.
That's a good point. But how many Spanish speakers in America are not descendant from a Spanish speaking country?
Well, I don't know if that is. I think that's besides the point.
I think it's a somewhat of a bad look for Americans. It's like learn
Yeah.
more about other cultures.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what the
I'm
point
on your
Michael
side.
was getting at. Yeah, it was like compared to other developed countries, America is way behind the curve in terms of speaking multiple languages. I think that's what
Uh,
Michael was getting at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's incredibly useful to speak a foreign language because I mean so much of the way we think is rooted in the language you speak. And when
Yeah.
you learn a second language, it's almost like you're almost learning a different form of logic. It's like Python versus I can't think of a different software language.
No, yeah. That was something that my Latin teacher first told me about when I was in high school, and it was like it blew my mind when I learned that like you can't think without words. Like try it. Like you won't be able to do it. And by knowing different languages, you're able to think about the world in different ways. And Brian, have you like experienced that at all? Like you said you're dreaming in Spanish now. Like that's got to be a trip.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. That and they say that happens, like it's a common thing that happens, and
Especially
the
while you're learning, right?
yeah, because it's on your mind a lot.
Hmm.
But the Spanish that I dream occasionally, it's not good Spanish. It's very broken. Obviously, like I don't have a full understanding of the language yet. Um, but it's still like I can, yeah, I can tell it's Spanish like in my dreams, and it's just really cool. And it's bizarre and scary and terrifying that there's the possibility of having a nightmare fully in Spanish that I can't understand, and someone's like chasing me, and it's like the Duolingo owl. But other than that, I mean, I don't know. I'm still early in this. Like, by no means am I even close to being like fluent, but I've just enjoyed the journey. And that's the other thing too is it's at your own pace. It's like reading a book. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
just you can do 5 minutes a day. You can do 5 hours a day. You can do anything in between. It's just
Well,
fun.
and that's what I wanted to also get at is like what's been your process for learning this language? Because you made the case earlier about how learning in grade school or high school is not the way to do it. So what's the process that you found success with?
So there's one of the reasons why it doesn't work in high school is because you don't have the amount of time you need to like really get all the input of
Mm-hmm.
the language. So one of the big like I guess I'll call it a buzzword or like a big I don't know, a big strategy, I guess I'll call it. It's called comprehensible input. So it's essentially, and I might butcher this, but I'll do my best. It's essentially just, there's input and output for everything, right? So like input is your reading and your listening of that language. And then the output is your speaking and your writing in that language. So comprehensible input is the definition of comprehensible input is input that you can understand, that you can comprehend, um, a vast majority of. So if you listen to something in Spanish and you understand like 85% of it, then that's like comprehensible input. Um, you need a lot of comprehensible input to learn a language. Think about like when you were learning English as a kid, like all that comprehensible input you were getting, watching kids shows and learning songs and like just hearing it all the time from your parents and like them talking to you, like that's you learning that language. So comprehensible input is just starting slow and like um listening and reading like really basic stuff and then understanding the core concepts of the language through context. So like you listen to a story and the storyteller is telling you the story and you're picking up things just through the context of the story. You're like, oh, I've heard this word before. Like, and through the context, I understand it's probably this. Like, I think I understand that. And then you hear it again, and you're like, okay, that's definitely this. So it's just this hugely long process of hours and hours and hours of listening. So to answer your original question, my process right now is mainly just listening. I literally, and it's so much fun because there's so much listening you can do. I literally just listen to Spanish. That's comprehensible to me. So at this point, it's pretty basic Spanish. It's not like baby talk or anything, but like I can't understand SpongeBob, for example. Like I cannot watch a SpongeBob episode in Spanish and understand it. So
Question.
I'm
Have you ever tried watching a movie like in Spanish but with subtitles? Because I found that's I don't know if it'll help too much, but you can kind of pick up on some of the lingo if you're reading the translation like as it's going.
So there was a study done about that, and what they did was I wish I had all the information for the study and the exact data, but I don't. So I'm going to estimate. Um, but what they did was they sat people down, and in the target language they played the movie with so like the audio was in their target language, but it had subtitles of the native language. So it was like us watching a Spanish movie with English subtitles, right? And then they had a different group where it was a Spanish movie with Spanish subtitles. And the group that watched the English subtitles barely learned anything. Like they didn't really come away with anything because you're just reading English. But the group that watched it in Spanish subtitles, they learned a ton. So I split my time between watching harder content with Spanish subtitles, which is amazing, by the way. I can actually understand, like when I read the subtitles, I can really understand higher level content. But I also need to train my ear to listen for things too. So I watch lower level content without subtitles as well.
Yeah. Wow, that's kind of like, yeah, it's like counterintuitive almost.
Yeah, and it's been a really cool process because it happens so slowly um that like I can now go back to when I just started and watch a video that I couldn't really understand at first, and I like it's like it's not even in a foreign language anymore. It's like it's just as easily understood as English.
Wow.
So that's part of what I do. That's the majority. I also do like flashcards and um like I have a grammar book that I do drills in every now and then, but I don't focus on that. I focus on listening.
Have you ever tried like songs, like foreign language songs? Because I find Rammstein to be the best way to learn German.
How's your German?
It's very bad.
No, I'm just kidding.
Du hast.
I haven't, just mainly because I guess of my relationship with music. I I'm sure that I would really enjoy, and I thought about this the other day, like just a funny like, oh, I've been listening to a Spanish band for like days and weeks and months, but they're an instrumental Spanish band.
Also,
Yeah, I think it'd be harder to find music that I like in Spanish than like that would take
Lamar
more
Culture.
time because I'm just like really picky when it comes to music. It's probably a fault of mine, but no, just like basic stories. Really, that's kind of it. Basic stories and like episodes and stuff.
I'm curious. So you said that's a lot of comprehensible input, right? That's what you've been working
Yeah.
on primarily. What is your comprehensible output like, I guess? Like, are you speaking this? Like, can you understand it but can't speak it? Or is your speaking like improving, or what's the comparison between the two?
So there's a lot of different schools of thought, a lot of different opinions about it. Some people say that speaking is not important at first. Like you should learn how to listen and that your output is just going to be garbage. It's a waste of time. And you should wait until you can really listen and understand without putting too much effort into it before you start talking.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's like so much conflicting opinions about speaking. Some people they think that they claim that you should speak day one, but then like do you correct or does the native speaker correct you? Do they not correct you? Like what's the best way to do this? What's the best way to do that? And it really comes down to like you just have to figure out for yourself what works for you. And for me right now, my output I don't write. That will probably come soon though. I'm excited to like start journaling and stuff in Spanish. But speak, but it's like garbage. My speaking is not good. There's no way for me to practice speaking without speaking to a native speaker. So a lot of uh, eventually, once you start getting a little bit better grasp of the language, you can get in these like language exchanges where it's a group chat or not a group chat, it's a text where
Uh,
I'm speaking with someone who is like a Spanish speaker, but they want to learn English. So we take turns. You know what I mean? Like we take turns speaking in English, and then we take turns speaking in Spanish.
oh,
And you can
interesting.
do that through text. You can do that through like voice chat. There's a ton of different platforms out there and apps and stuff where you can find other people that want to learn your language, and you both have something of value. I'm a native English speaker, so when we speak in English, I'm giving them that, like they're learning how to speak English and listen to English from a native speaker,
Right.
and vice versa too.
So that's like because I remember hearing about some folks who are like in college where they get to the higher level foreign language courses and their teacher only speaks to them in French or only speaks to them in Spanish. And I guess what I was thinking would be like helpful is if you're talking to someone and they only respond to you in Spanish, like they can understand your English just fine, but and you only respond to them in English. So it's like you're comprehending what they're saying, you're speaking it back in English. I don't know.
That
That's probably
that's called crosstalk. So that's a whole other thing.
crosstalk.
It's where like if I want to learn Spanish, I would sit down with a native Spanish speaker that it doesn't matter if they speak English, but like I don't speak Spanish, and I speak to them in English, and they answer in Spanish. It's most beneficial for like people who are pretty new to the language. It's always helpful, but like it's because you learn again through context, and you like can draw pictures and like, hi, I'm Brian. Like this is my family, and that person is listening to me speak and like point to the pictures of like this is my family, and then I ask them in English like, do you have a family, like tell me about your family, and then they in Spanish reply, so we're both learning, you know what I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but we're not speaking in the foreign language, we're speaking in our native languages. So
So do you want to get involved with one of those group chats in the near future, or what's your timeline?
yeah, I mean, there's no rush, I guess. I don't know, I should probably start um speaking soon and like getting that output. But right now I'm having breakthroughs in listening. So I'm really happy with what I'm doing at the moment. So there's no reason to uh to go outside of what I'm doing right now, I guess. I don't know. Maybe soon.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm having great progress with what I'm doing, and I'm enjoying it a lot. It doesn't feel like a chore.
that's really cool, man. It's like super duper inspiring. I don't think I have the time to do that right now because I got all these other projects going on, but it's definitely like seeing you be able to do it is like, oh man, I can do that someday, you know. Before it seemed like an insurmountable task, but
30 minutes a day, dude. That's
you've
all it
done
takes.
it. Yeah, I don't have 30 minutes, man.
Yeah, hey, fair game.
Brian,
Yeah.
not to put you on the spot, but just out of curiosity, would you be able to, like, just for instance, be able to describe the dinner we just ate in Spanish? The wonderful dinner you made?
Um, Not really.
Uh,
Yeah,
what's like the extent of like your day so far that you could kind of describe? I don't know.
Yeah, I want to hear it. I want to hear this. You've been saying you can speak Spanish or you're learning Spanish. I want to see the proof, dude.
dude, my speaking is really bad. Yeah, definitely another time, but like it's a different skill, you know what I mean? And I haven't really
Right.
I can say some really basic things, and I can, like, if I needed to talk to somebody, I definitely could, but it would be littered with mistakes, which you're not afraid of making mistakes when you're speaking, but like I don't even I haven't even practiced like all the tenses and everything. So
Yeah.
it would just be garbage coming out of my mouth.
Fair enough. I know like maybe a handful of words in Spanish, so that's my extent.
Yeah, I could briefly explain like my life to somebody, like what I do and like where I live and like my family
What is
and
your name?
huh?
What is your name?
Yeah, soy Brian.
So,
Ooh, there we go.
soy Miguel.
Me llamo Brian y yo vivo en Virginia con mi esposa y mis dos perros. Ah, mis perros se llaman Milo y Piper y vivimos en una casa un poco grande. Um,
It's pretty good.
That's awesome, dude.
yeah,
That sounded great.
My problem is I took 2 years of Spanish, German, and French, and barely knew any of them. So when I try any of them, I kind of mix them all together.
yeah.
Like
I took
me,
German
I'm
in
all used
college.
German. I like German.
Yeah, it's
For me,
cool.
it's simpler because it's a very like straightforward, like a technical language. Like they kind of just for words of new things, they just mash other words into one big word, which I can get behind.
Yeah. If you spent time learning one language, you wouldn't have those like confusions that you just talked about. Like you would learn that language instead of, and if you learned a bunch of similar languages at the same time, then you would probably have those confusions. But uh, mixing up languages that you haven't really learned doesn't really happen once you start like focusing on something. You know what I mean?
But one of my favorite German words is the word for glove. And this is how you can tell they just like, okay, we have one word, we're just going to like describe the next thing with words we already have. The word for glove is handschuh.
It's hand shoe.
Handschuh, yeah. Or I can't remember if that's the word or just the translation of it. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, Spanish doesn't have the word for uh toes, I think. So if you want to say toes, it's like fingers of the feet or something like that.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. The German word for glove is Handschuh.
That's hilarious. Easy to remember.
It's the shoe for your hand.
Makes sense.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, Michael, you should learn German, dude.
I tried because I took it a bit in high school and in college. Uh, but one of the biggest barriers for me for learning a foreign language, and I think this might be the case for a lot of Americans, at least of like similar intelligence to me, uh, I think the American educational system does a bad job of even teaching English. So when I go to learn a foreign language, I don't know the inner machinations of English. Like, what is an adverb? What is a gerund? What is a past participle? Uh, because as a fluent native English speaker, you learn it just from talking to other people. You're constantly surrounded by it, so you just pick it up. You pick up the grammatical structure of it just intuitively. And you can do that with foreign languages too if you're exposed to them in like a natural environment. And that's how the that's one upper hand that Europeans have is they are exposed to all those different languages.
That's what comprehensible input is all about though, is listening and having prolonged exposure to the language. And you can probably be, you can probably benefit yourself picking up a grammar book every now and then, but you don't need to like drill grammar concepts
Mhm.
like for a long time, if ever. If you just have that if you spend the time exposing yourself to the language and like listening, like 30
Yeah.
minutes a day or whatever, like you pick up on those grammatical structures without even realizing it. Like it's just like we learned English, you know what I mean? Like we didn't when we learned English from like a basic level, as a kid, we didn't know what a past participle was. You know what I mean? You
Exactly.
just
Yeah, and I think that's one thing. Like foreign language classes, say in high school, focus too much on is like the rigidity of the grammatical structure. I think
yeah.
if they just focused more on like just having fun with it, and just being exposed to like, here, let's listen to Ramstein today, or stuff like that, or what you're talking about, like exposure, instead
Yeah.
of let's gruelingly rote memorization of how you construct. I put my hand shoes on my feet because I'm a sneaky.
Yeah, man, just do it like if you could do it yourself, like self-study. That's what I'm doing. Just figuring out what I'm not saying that you should do what I'm doing just because it's fun or whatever, but it's been a really cool experience and I would definitely recommend it. But you don't have to do it like they do it
Yeah,
in schools, and that's what I've been saying. It's like you can do your own method and whatever is like interesting to you that day. Like you don't have a semester, you don't have tests. Like just oh cool, I'm going to learn a couple words today and like whatever.
I'd love to. Right now, for me, I have the same problem as Chase. Is like sometimes I don't have 30 minutes, but
Yeah, 5
but
minutes.
yeah,
Mhm.
I could uh, add to the schedule for sure. You ever try what's the app? What the little app?
Duolingo.
Duolingo. Yeah, I tried that for a little while, and I just wasn't consistent.
Yeah, people have a lot of different opinions on Duolingo. I think it's a really, really good like jumping off point. Like if you can, like you can learn the super basics of a language through it, but it's not going to take you too far, in my opinion. I don't have any like credentials to say that, but I do think that it's great for really basic stuff. It's just like through repetition and learning like the really basic, simple sentence structures and stuff like that. And then from there, like once you have a little bit of vocabulary and a little bit of the familiarity of the language, like you can start doing regular input.
Because like verbs are like the biggest thing. You got to know your verbs.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's definitely a lot to know, but you can like sit there and watch a like super basic story that's maybe meant for kids, like really small children that has a lot of context clues, like pictures and stuff like that. And if you can sit there and understand what's going on, like the general gist of it, like that's what you want. Like you just want to consume that content for like hours.
Yeah.
And then over time, like you just get it. And it's the most amazing thing. Like it's like, whoa, I understand this. I know what these words are. Like I get it. It's really
So,
cool.
what about like? So, describe to me the types of like the medium of the foreign languages. Are these like films, like animated shorts that you're watching that are like with pictures and images that correspond to the story being told, or is it just like a Spanish person talking to a camera telling you a story?
So good mix of everything. The biggest platform or service that I use, funny enough, it's called Dreaming Spanish.
Mm.
Um, it's a service that this Spaniard started. His name's Pablo, and he learned. I think he knows 4 languages, but he learned Japanese through comprehensible input. And it's this comprehensible input, by the way, like it kind of started around the 70s by Stephen Krashen, this language guy. I don't know my history, but Pablo he like took it one step further, and he has this entire YouTube channel that's free, um, and it's just content in 4 different like difficulty levels, I guess you'd say. So there's super beginner, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And they have videos of all different types. I mean, from different dialects. Like there's I don't know how many like hosts, or he calls them guides, but a lot of different variety of content, and it's just really cool. And yeah, it's literally just someone like speaking into a webcam with a whiteboard a lot of the times, and they draw pictures, and they talk about like this little like Carlito and like what he's doing. And he goes to the store, and like you learn through like the story and the context, like, oh, I know what the word for store is now. You know what I mean? Because it's like they make it really obvious
Say it like 1,000
in the
times.
beginning. Yeah, in the beginning levels, and as you get to like the intermediate, they stop with the like repeating something a million times. They stop drawing everything. Like they just speak, but like in kind of a uh, not a super quick pace, but not a slow pace either. And then once you get to advanced, it's just like natural speaking about particular topics. But it's really cool, man. That's the biggest service that I use right now. I really enjoy it. It doesn't feel like you're working, and it doesn't feel like you're studying, and you're just listening to a story, and it's really cool.
It's really cool. Yeah, I was the reason why I was asking was because my primary way of how I consume books is by running. And so I was like, well, maybe I could just listen to these books in Spanish. But I would the reason why I listen to books, well, I listen to nonfiction or fiction books when I'm running, like, fantasy and stuff like that. So I wouldn't really get much of the story out.
Hey,
And if I
good.
was listening to self-help books, it's like, well, I wouldn't be helping myself. I'd just be trying to learn Spanish. Like all of the, tips and tricks for how to better my life would be lost because
But
I'd just be like,
Chase,
what is
but
this Spanish?
wouldn't learning
Chase.
a language be bettering, bettering yourself?
Yes.
Isn't that like
But then it's like you're splitting your time and so both suffer. It's like it would be more beneficial if I just dedicated myself to one thing as opposed to trying to do two things half-assed and not accomplishing either at a rate that's sustainable. Hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Brian and Michael and myself. I find those types of conversations so inspiring because I've never in my life thought about learning a second language, and hearing Brian how he was able to take this sort of systematic approach to accomplishing this, seemingly insurmountable task, like I sort of talk about in the podcast, was very, very inspiring for me. And I haven't picked up trying to learn Spanish yet because, like I said, I don't think I have 30 minutes a day right now, but it's definitely, keeping me in check and reminding me that, wow, there's people every day who are working hard at their goals, and it keeps me motivated to stay working towards my goals. And I hope that you listening to this stay motivated listening and are able to set your goals each week and are working towards them. Speaking of my goals and goals in general, I guess, I have a confession to make. I did not accomplish my goals for this week. I said that I wanted to complete the first act of my screenplay, and I did not do that. Not even a little bit. I had some things come up, and, just life sort of happened to me last week, and I was not able to accomplish my goals that I set, but I did make progress. I wrote about 3 scenes and realized I have a lot more work to do to figure out what these scenes really look like. I have my outline, but okay, what does each scene actually look like? What does each scene actually feel like? And that was a learning experience again, always learning, trying to figure out how to do this screenwriting thing. And I still have my goal of finishing by the end of the year. So I'm going to work really hard to get that completed, but we will see how it goes. I'll let you know. Hopefully soon I'll let you know if I finish this goal or not. Beyond that, I did want to give a quick shout out to everybody who's listening. Thank you all so much. It really means the world to me. I see, some of these back end stats, and just the fact that anybody is listening it means the world to me. And I want to thank you all. I also want to give a huge shout out to Green Bean for all of the musical themes in this podcast. And I want to give a shout out to everyone who's reviewed the podcast. Please rate and review
and give me a shout on Instagram if you did so. I would love to hear about it, and you'll get read on the podcast as long as it's a 5-star review. I won't be reading anything less than 5 stars. So if you have less than a 5-star review, don't even leave it. Actually, do leave that. I want the feedback. And if you're on YouTube, be sure to leave a comment. I want to engage with you. Like I said, I'm still working to build up sort of some way I can build a community aspect to this podcast, because I want it to be, instead of just a monologue or a dialogue between me and a couple of buddies, I want it to be an offline dialogue too. So I think that's it for me. I hope you all set your goals this week. I hope you all accomplish your goals, and I will talk to you all Monday. Bye-bye.
Improve Podcast.